They're not currently dangerous to people because no one's living there, but several of the wells are actively leaking oil and gas and water to the surface.
Seeking riches, the oil industry punched millions of holes in the ground across the country. The practice here started before statehood. By law, companies are responsible for plugging and cleaning wells, but many of those companies and people went bankrupt, no longer exist, or the owner has since died. Now that responsibility falls to the state, and there are more wells in Alaska than anyone realized.
Okay, we are at the location of well 17. Pretty interesting find here.
This is an Orphan well. It's 104 years old, ancient, abandoned, cemented in the forest, put here by the Chilkat Oil Company.
Super interesting find.
It's about 20 miles southeast of the mouth of the Copper River.
You could string these rods across that kind of landscape, up and down terrain.
This was Alaska's first petroleum refinery. Oil was discovered here in 1902 and at one point produced more than 50,000 gallons of gasoline. It was partially destroyed by fire and abandoned.
An orphan well is a well in which the operator is unknown or insolvent.
Because of that, now the state's responsible to plug the well and ensure it's not leaking harmful chemicals. Methane leaking from many of these unplugged wells is a severe safety hazard and significant cause of climate change. Across the country, there are more than 2 million unplugged oil and gas wells that need to be cleaned up. While Alaska has a low number, the costs to safely plug the wells are huge.
The modern day wells that I'm used to working on when I was an engineer, they a lot of times would stick pieces of wood or coiled up ropes down these wells as part of their plugging. And we have very incomplete well records.
A typical orphan well in the lower 48 costs roughly $75,000 to $125,000 to decommission.
And there's another engine here.
But Alaska's wells can be in remote places, and the price is closer to $3.1 million for each.
You know, sometimes half of the cost of the plugging project could be mobilization and demobilization to the site. So when we talk about someplace like the Katala, it's helicopter flights, it could be brush and road creation, clearing to access equipment to the sites. And this all requires coordination with various agencies. But if you think about how quickly vegetation regrows in Alaska, and you think about 100 years of growth, it's quite an endeavor to access and get the proper equipment into these locations.
A few years ago, the state thought there were 12 wells, but later realized there's almost 50.
You got the original belt-driven.
Several have recently been found, like well 17 in remote Katala, east of Cordova.
They're not currently dangerous to people because no one's living there, but several of the wells are actively leaking oil and gas and water to the surface.
Because Alaska is so big, many of our orphan wells are in remote places. But sometimes there are ones you drive by almost every day. South of Houston, this is Orphan Well Rosetta 2. Drilled in the 1950s, the state reports its information about this well's history is incomplete, like so many others.
There are 8 wells in the south central region. I think 8 or 9. I think we might have added a well. And so those are the wells that are closest to people. Some of these wells are right off the Parks Highway. You might have driven by them and not even known. Some are on private property. And so we were prioritizing those wells because they're, number one, closest to humans, and number two, they're relatively close to the road systems.
The Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act provides Alaska with millions of dollars to the state to plug and clean abandoned wells. To find one, look for a dent in the land or pipes sticking out of the ground.
It's possible there are wells in the state that we don't know about.
And there is federal help. The Administration Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act provides $32.2 million for Alaska, but it will take many years to clean up all the known wells in the state and around the country.